Hey everyone, today we're going to talk about court removals, immigration court, and ICE check-ins and protecting your rights in 2025. There's a lot going on. My name is Ruby Powers. I'm board certified immigration attorney here in Texas. It's federal law, so we can help individuals all over the US and in the world on US immigration matters. So I'm here with Powers Law Group. Yeah, it's 15 years old, and I've been practicing for 16 plus years. So we've seen an uptick in ICE raids. There's been sort of like a quota to have more detentions. That's been a big push for our current president. And so it's important to know what your rights are and that there's different types of warrants and who can do what to you, where, when, and how. For the biggest point is that the biggest one is the judicial warrant is the one that could allow ICE to enter your private home. That's basically the big one. Administrative warrants cannot allow you to enter a private space without consent. And we're going to show a difference between administrative and a judicial warrant. So it matters because if you voluntarily open the door, ICE can enter even without a judicial warrant. Never consent without verifying the document, and tell that to everyone else that lives in your house. So that neighbor, friend, whoever, whatever, let them know that this is the policy. So let's talk about what the difference is. This is a administrative warrant. So look at it. Warrant of arrest of alien at the top. It does not signed by a judge. It says Department of Homeland Security on it. So you can Google this. You can look, what's the difference between administrative and judicial warrant? And you can study them really closely and you can see. Okay, let's go to judicial warrant. Here you can see at the top, United States District Court, search and seizure warrant. And what it's going to have is when it's filled out, it's going to have a location, a name, it's a date in which it's valid. It's going to be signed by the judge. You can see down here at the bottom, judge's signature. Okay, so this is really important. So no, this cannot open the door for ICE. Yes, this can open the door for ICE. So make sure you understand that and everyone else understand that, because it just takes one person to open the door who doesn't know, and then the whole thing can fall. So administrative is issued by ICE, not judges. As we said, do not authorize entry into private places without consent, so no one is required to open the door. Civil registration warrants are issued by magistrates and allow ICE or HSI to enter business premises during raids without needing to identify specific people. So that would be for like workplace raids, for example. The warrants cannot be used to collect evidence for criminal cases and only apply for enforcing immigration laws and employee rights. Even during warrant raids, employees have the right to remain silent and request to speak with an attorney. So that's really important, because if you work at a location that has a lot of individuals that might be, or the location might be targeted, it could make you a target as well, even if maybe you have a status and that's not an issue. But if you don't have a status, it could also make you more of a target, right? So where and when can ICE arrest you? So in your home, ICE cannot enter without a judicial warrant, your consent, or emergency circumstances. At your workplace, they can conduct workplace raids, but cannot force you entry into a non-public area. In public spaces, ICE has more authority, but cannot force you to answer questions or show identification without legal issue cause. I really look to the ACLU a lot for they have a legal, it's like you just Google like ACLU, know your rights. They have a lot of really good information there, and they have it in other languages, and they also have different scenarios where you can see, like if you're stopped within your car or at your home or out on the street and those types of things, and like giving you some wording to use. And I really think it's important to do a mock scenario. I mean, some of the videos I've seen online that show the scene and sort of like do a mock-up of the situation, I think that really helps people understand. And so if you need to, play it out, and so that everyone in the family understands and everyone in the household. So it's been a big uptick in increased arrests nationwide, and we've also seen a big focus in Texas as well. So there's this thing called expedited removal. Okay, this was like in the first week, they expanded it. What does that mean? Well, before it said that if you were caught near the border within 2 weeks of arrival, then and you could not prove that you had been here, then that was, that would be that could be expedited removal if you're within 100 miles of the border and you were here in less than 2 weeks. But then they decided to expand it, and now they have it's for 2 years. You have to prove that you've been here more than 2 years. That means there's a whole lot more people who've been here less than 2 years, and 2/3 of the country is close to is inside the 100-mile border around the United States. And so that means a lot of people, right? So expedited removal means you don't see a judge. It's just like boom, it's pretty darn fast. And it carries a 5-year reentry bar. There is a waiver for it, but it's usually pretty hard to overcome that. And you have to have certain family members to be able to do that usually. So if you do express fear of persecution, it might lead to an asylum interview. But there's been a lot of changes going on. So I would say that there's like what should happen and what's happening, and there's a difference. So there could be erroneous deportations. I even saw this before the current administration, a situation where an individual was near the border and he had been here for many years, but they weren't listening to him and they were almost had an expedited removal, but he found someone to help fight for him. And then later on, we got his case. So there's more, Trump is proposing fines and prison time. And he's also, let's see, we're going back. For those who don't do a registry, there's this alien registration that came about recently. I believe the deadline is April 11th, and there's a lot of restrictions. And there's a lot of like requirements, let's just say. You have to really read it to analyze whether or not you have registered already by virtue of what you might have done in immigration. So it is not as simple like these people did this and these people did that. You really have to read it for your particular situation. And adults, parents, are responsible for their children under 14 if they are required to register and haven't done so. So do look at this because it's important to know, and it is new territory because like it did exist before, but we really haven't seen it in many, many years. One thing I want to mention is the online detainee locator system. Okay, so there's a link and you need to either have the name, the country of birth or birth date, or the A number. And if the person's detained and you have that information and they're in the system, then you can find out where they are located. For example, if it's like Montgomery Processing Center, which is about an hour or 45 minutes from our office. So it's important to know about this online detainee locator. You can just Google online detainee locator and you're going to find it. But again, you need to either know name, country, birth, and date of birth, or the A number. Almost nobody knows the A number because if they never had one before, they weren't issued one until they get processed. So these are some things to know. The immigration court number is this one down here, the 1-800-898-7180. And if you do have an A number, I'm going to show you something really quickly. Then you also can go to the online detainee locator. So I'm just Googling that. I'm going to go to that website. And then I'm also going to go to this other website that I like to show for court. Okay, so here we are. Online detainee locator. Here we got it, right? So here you see that A number and the country of birth, or you have the name, country of birth, and the date of birth. Okay, this is it. Just Google online detainee locator. The other place that good to know is this one, this acis.uir justice.gov. Okay, whatever. So I'm on here all the time. So you put in the A number. So if it's a recent one, it's probably like 267 or 234, whatever. And you fill it all out and then you click submit. And then it's going to tell you whether or not the individual is in court waiting for a hearing, or they already have a dismissal or deportation or what have you. So this is a really good website because it used to be you had to call that 1-800 number, which was like annoying because you had to call it and then click the different numbers to get the different information, but this is pretty awesome. I think the only thing this doesn't show is it doesn't show how many days have passed since you applied for asylum, though. Okay, continuing on. In general, there's a master calendar and there's a merits hearing. So master calendar is the first hearing usually, right? And that's usually where the judge is asking, so what's your form of relief? That's like, what are you going to apply for? Is this address correct? What language are you using? Do you agree with the allegations and the charge? So the allegations usually say you are not a citizen of the United States. We're a citizen of XYZ country. You entered on whatever day and you overstayed and don't have status. So those are usually what it says. But it's really important to a trained eye to be able to read, was it properly given notice? And if there's any errors or that need to be of dispute. So that's usually what happens. And then the judge says, okay, what are you applying for? And then we might say asylum, withholding of removal, convention against torture, or cancellation of removal, or whatever the form of relief is. And then the judge is like, okay, I'm going to give you this date to submit your documentation and this date for the final hearing. If they don't give you a date for the submission, then that means that you use what's on the EYR manual, which right now is 30 days. It used to be 15 days, now it's 30 days, but some judges have their own deadlines. The merits hearing is when you put on the whole hearing. Honestly, they're usually only given about an hour and a half. And if you don't finish in that time, you need to have another hearing and another hearing potentially. I've had about 3 parts or 4 parts one time. And that is when you present your attorney presents their case, the trial attorney or ACC or OPLA, lots of different names, they will cross-examine the immigrant, and then your attorney can redirect you. The judge can ask at any point. There also could be voluntary departure request if the individual just doesn't want to have a deportation order, and then that could either be pre-hearing or post-hearing voluntary departure. Now, what's going on also is that there's these ICE check-ins, a lot of ICE check-ins. And what does that mean? Well, people who are under the ICE knows that they're here, are saying, okay, you need to come on this day at this time, at this location. Maybe they have an ankle monitor, maybe they have some other GPS thing, some non-detained type of device. But right now we're getting into a little more scary territory because we're not sure exactly what's going to happen in all of these. It's generally been that we've found like that they've been okay, but it also depends on like what's the severity of the situation. Does the individual have something pending? Do they have any crimes? How close are the recent entry? These are the types of things that we're concerned about. So I don't want to say too much because we're still trying to piece together these last 6 weeks, what's really happening, these ICE check-ins. But for the most part, be prepared, and I would say take an attorney. We've also been telling a lot of people to have a family preparedness plan. Which means like things like a power of attorney, a medical power of attorney, a guardianship document for their children, communicating with the bank, communicating with the hospital or the school, letting people know what your wishes are if a parent would not be there when our parents would not be there when the kid comes home from school. So these are the types of things that you need to be thinking about. We did do a webinar on that in Spanish. We're going to do one in English as well, and we can assist individuals in these very basic emergency style type of documents, and we can help you prepare them and notarize them and have them in the event of those things. So power of attorney can designate a trusted person to handle legal and financial matters. A will, we do not do those, but I would suggest having one, and that would be with an estate planning attorney. A temporary guardianship letter, we can assist you with those. And identification documents, that's important to have those organized, have your bank account set up. And, if you are head of the household and your spouse doesn't know where the money's at, that is not going to help them if you get detained. So please be smart about this. If people are not prepared, you're going to waste precious time where an individual is going to be detained even longer. And if things go awry, they might just have to stay detained during the whole case. And the more a person's detained, the more they don't want to stay detained, and they start wanting to sign to say that they're okay leaving. And that's the other thing we like to tell people is don't sign something you don't understand, and do know what your form of relief or your options are. Be Just know that, because you don't want to be looking for your attorney when you're detained. You want to already know who you're going to hire and have them be prepared in case you are detained, or put in proceedings of some sort. So, we're seeing various forms of relief, but let's just say the big ones are asylum. But if you've been here more than a year and you haven't filed, then usually your chances are a lot lower, but it can depend on what the reasons are and where you're applying from. Cancellation of removal is, cancellation could be for non-LPR or an LPR, but let's say for the typical non-LPR, which means they're not a legal permanent resident, they've been here 10 years or more, they have extreme and unusual hardship to a U.S. citizen, legal permanent resident, spouse, parent, or child. This is one that's pretty common, and we're telling people to have their documentation. So remember I said expedited removal, if you don't have proof that you've been here 2 years or more, they could just basically deport you. Well, you want to make sure that you have that proof readily available. You could just be like, boom, here, I've been here, look at this date, I've been here more than 2 years. Same thing with cancellation. We're telling people to have their documents in order to be able to prove that they've been here 10 years or more. Adjustment of status, usually a lot of those individuals won't get put in court, but maybe they are for some reason. Prosecutorial discretion is not as readily available as it used to be, and so we shouldn't put a lot of hope in that. Although we're talking to people all over the country, just to give you a heads up, there's a lot of detention in Texas. There's a lot of family detention, for example, and they're building up new locations in places I didn't even know they were doing that for. But we normally have heard of the ones in Carnes and Dilley and like Hutto, for example, but now I'm hearing about Henderson and Laredo being some of the new places. So so recap, ICE can arrest anyone anywhere. No, there's legal limits to that. So that's a myth. And the myth, signing ICE documents helps your case. I don't think so. You need to know what you're signing. You need to be knowledgeable and understand, and you definitely need it to be explained to you in your language. And you do have, the other thing is you do have the right to remain silent if you want to. So really right now, we want to be a resource for you. That's why we're doing all these videos, these webinars, all these consults. Like we're here. We've been here. It's not like we just showed up. We've been here. We've been here for Trump 1.0. I'm doing a lot of media interviews. I'm on speaking regularly. We're in going. The whole team goes to conferences. We're constantly learning, and we take tough cases. But what's also happening is you really want to find your attorney or your legal counsel, because a lot of us are being overwhelmed right now, and the bandwidth that we need to have with all the constant changes is very trying. So you make sure you understand you don't need to open the door unless you see a judicial warrant. You can have them slide in underneath, show it on the window, make sure. And I would record this whole interaction, so in case anyone says no, they opened the door but you didn't, then make sure it's clear. So don't sign documents without speaking to an attorney. Remain silent. I would say review the ACLU website about Know Your Rights and evaluate your scenario. Do some role playing so that you know what you would do in that situation. There's a lot of different other great resources out there, and also wanted to just mention the most recent updates is that the Trump administration is enacting the Alien Enemies Act, and he used it to deport Venezuelans and El Salvadorians to El Salvador last weekend. A judge had told him not to send them, but that's actually still in the news right now. We're still waiting to see what's going to happen there. But in this particular situation, he was declaring these Venezuelan members of a gang that they were alien enemies. This act from 1798 allows mass deportation without due process. And so now we're having that challenge as to, is this truly a time in which there is a crisis or a time of war, or that we need to invoke the Alien Enemies Act. So this is truly late breaking news, and we're trying to see what's going to unfold with that. And we're seeing situations between judicial branch and the executive branch, and so we're going to keep monitoring this. But basically, if the Trump administration continues along that path, they're going to try to use this as a way to bifurcate or bypass due process. And so a lot of what we know as the law, and that we've been following and adhering to for many years, could change. But I think this is very timely and remains to be seen what's going to happen. Bottom line, be safe, be smart, have a consult, have your documents in order, know what you sign, don't open the door without a judicial warrant. We're going to do this program in Spanish, and feel free to share it with a friend, loved one. Know your rights, okay? Just be smart about this. And everybody in your household or that's around your household, be prepared. It's important to have that just in case documents. It's in case that be organized. I can give you more stories about how not being organized costs time, money, and maybe even a deportation order. But you also need to have funds to be able to hire an attorney, because it's, you have to pay them. So, and there was a lot of funding cuts around the country for a lot of pro bono and other type of services in immigration space. You can reach us all these different places, Blue Sky, TikTok, we have a lot of videos, Instagram. Our newsletter comes out in English and Spanish every other week. Everybody in the team speaks Spanish. And so this is the week we're doing court removals and ICE check-ins. We're going to be talking about the family preparedness plan and more about mass deportations. I know not fun topics, but we're trying to be the resource for you. So thanks so much for watching. Share with a friend, and feel free to give us a call if you want at 713-589-2085. We also have online scheduling. We are available via Zoom, in person, phone. All the attorneys speak English and Spanish. We can be a resource for you. Thanks so much.